Good morning/afternoon, friends. I want to start today by telling you something that took me years of research and even more years of heartbreak to learn. You don't need a lifetime to understand someone's character. You just need to pay attention. When we were growing up, we were often taught to judge people by their achievements, their charm, their popularity, or how they make us feel in the moment. But if we are going to grow into conscious leaders, loving partners, intentional parents, or grounded humans, we need to go deeper. So today, I want to offer you 5 small things, yes, just 5 that reveal the big truth about someone's character. Whether it's the janitor, the waiter, the customer service rep, how someone treats people with no influence over their lives tells you who they really are. Empathy isn't just for show. It's the day-to-day, small kindnesses that signal someone is truly grounded. If they're kind when it matters least, they're kind at. This one's big. Do they say, "I was wrong," or do they blame someone else? Do they retreat into shame, or lean into growth? Here's what I know for sure: people who have done their own inner work can sit with failure without falling apart. They see vulnerability not as weakness but as truth. And character is about truth. A person of integrity doesn't guilt you for setting a boundary. They don't punish you for saying no. They respect your stop as much as your go. And when someone gets defensive, angry, or manipulative around boundaries, what you're seeing is fear disguised as control. If someone is always tearing others down behind their back, know this: you're not the exception. You're next. Gossip isn't connection. It's counterfeit vulnerability. Real character is speaking about people with dignity even when they're not in the room. Anyone can be charming at the party. But who shows up when the dishes pile up? When the diagnosis comes in? When the deadline hits? True character isn't revealed in the good times. It's in the grit. The tension. There's a quote I come back to often, one that's echoed through almost every interview I've done, every piece of research I've pored over, and every hard conversation I've had in my personal life. It says, the true measure of a person's character is how they treat someone who can do nothing for them. And every time I hear that, I feel it in my bones. Because here's what I know: it's easy to be kind to the CEO. It's easy to laugh at the jokes of someone who signs your paycheck. It's easy to open the door for someone who might help you land your next big opportunity. But none of those moments are real litmus tests of character. They're just social choreography. They're what we've been taught to do when it benefits us. The real truth, the deep truth about someone's heart, is in how they treat people who hold absolutely no power in their lives. Let's take a look at everyday life. You're out at a restaurant. The person you're with barely glances at the server. They bark their order, don't say thank you, and don't look up from their phone when the food arrives. Now ask yourself, who are they performing for? Not the server. Not you, if you're really paying attention. That moment, small, maybe even forgettable to them, is not about the food. It's a glimpse into how they see others. If someone believes kindness is reserved only for the people who can elevate them, impress them, or give them something in return, then what they're offering isn't kindness. It's currency. And character cannot be transactional. We live in a culture that often celebrates the big, bold gestures. Public generosity. Speeches about leadership and empathy. But what we overlook far too often are the small, quiet moments that tell the real story: holding the door for the janitor, making eye contact with the cashier, remembering the name of the receptionist. Not because they can do something for us, but because they matter. Because their humanity is enough. This is why I always tell leaders, and really, anyone in a position of influence, watch what happens in the margins. Watch what people do when no one is watching, or when they think the person in front of them doesn't matter. And I say that in quotes because in my world, everyone matters. But I know not everyone lives like that. Some people divide the world into the valuable and the invisible. And the danger is, we start to believe it's okay to behave differently depending on which one someone is. When I was doing interviews for one of my books, I asked people to describe a moment when they saw someone's character clearly, not just what they said, but how they acted. And again, the answers weren't about grand, heroic acts. They were about everyday choices. Someone who cleaned up after themselves even when no one was around. Someone who stopped to help a stranger even though they were in a hurry. Someone who asked the janitor how their day was going and actually waited for the answer. What do all these have in common? Presence, compassion, awareness, a deep understanding that dignity isn't earned by status. It's inherent. Here's the hard part, though. Sometimes we don't want to see what's right in front of us. Maybe the person who's dismissive of the waiter is charming with us. Maybe they're funny or charismatic or well-liked. So we give them a pass. We excuse their behavior by saying, well, they're just having a bad day, or that's just how they are with people. But the truth is, when we overlook these moments, we start building relationships on shaky ground. Because if someone is consistently unkind to others, eventually that's going to reach us. The cruelty just hasn't made its way to our side of the table yet. Kindness, at its core, is about recognition. It's about saying, I see you. You matter. And when someone consistently refuses to see others, especially those they don't think they need, what they're really saying is, I only care about people who serve me. That's not character. That's ego. Now let's flip the script. Think about a time when someone treated you with deep respect, even when you had nothing to offer. Maybe you were in a hard season, maybe you were new, maybe you were overlooked by others and someone showed up for you with presence, kindness, and zero expectations. That kind of moment stays with you. It doesn't just change your day, it shifts how you see the world. It reminds you that you're worthy, regardless of what you produce, what you achieve, or what you give in return. Those are the people I want to surround myself with. Not the loudest in the room. Not the ones with the flashiest resumes. The ones who show up with kindness on the hard days. The ones who make space for people who are often ignored. The ones who understand that being decent isn't optional, it's essential. Character isn't built on platforms or performance. It's revealed in those unseen, unscripted moments, how we treat the barista, the delivery driver, the person cleaning up after the meeting. That's where integrity lives. And if we want to become people of real courage and compassion, we start there. So next time you're trying to figure out who someone really is, don't watch how they treat you. Watch how they treat the person who brings their food. The one who holds the door. The one who can't offer them anything in return. Because in those moments, you're not just seeing behavior. You're seeing their character. If you really want to understand someone, how they operate, what they value, what their emotional core looks like, don't watch them on a winning day. Don't judge them on a stage or in a moment of success. Watch them when things fall apart. Pay close attention when the spotlight goes out and failure walks into the room. That's where the truth lies. That's where vulnerability and character sit side by side. And that's where the work really begins. The way someone responds to failure tells you more about them than any resume ever will. Failure is humbling, sometimes even humiliating. It peels away the polished parts of us and lays bare what's underneath: our coping mechanisms, our stories about worthiness, our ability to sit in discomfort. And I've learned, through years of research and my own messes, that there is no moment more honest than the one when someone falls short of who they wanted to be. It's in that moment that you see who runs toward accountability and who runs away. Who hides behind blame, anger, or avoidance, and who leans in, breathes deeply, and says, "This hurts, but I'm staying." Vulnerability and failure are intertwined. You cannot fail without feeling exposed. And you cannot grow without walking through that exposure. When someone makes a mistake, when they mess up, it's not the mistake itself that defines them, it's what they do next. Do they deny it? Do they shift the blame to someone else? Do they pretend it didn't happen? Or do they take ownership, face the impact, and open themselves up to the discomfort that accountability brings? The people I trust the most in this world are not the ones who have never failed. They are the ones who have failed, who have hurt others unintentionally, who have dropped the ball, and who have done the hard work to own it. They are the people who can say, "I got that wrong. I see it. I'm listening. And I want to do better." That right there is a radical act. It's not weakness. It's courage. In fact, I would argue that owning our vulnerability in the face of failure is one of the bravest things we can do. And let's be clear, failure doesn't have to be massive to be revealing. It can be small, even subtle. Missing a deadline. Saying something hurtful in a moment of stress. Not following through on a promise. Every one of those is an invitation to grow or retreat. And how someone shows up in those moments tells you who they really are, not who they say they are. We all have patterns. For some of us, failure immediately activates shame. That inner voice gets loud, you're not good enough. You always mess things up. Everyone's going to see the real you now. And when shame takes the wheel, we tend to armor up. We get defensive, we lash out, or we shut down. These are self-protective responses. They're very human. But they also block connection, growth, and trust. The key difference is that some people are willing to notice those patterns, sit with them, and work through them. Others stay stuck in them, repeating the same avoidance over and over again. Vulnerability isn't just about showing emotions. It's about the willingness to show up in moments when there are no guarantees. When we say, I don't know how this is going to go, but I'm here for it anyway, we are stepping into our most honest selves. And when someone can bring that energy into a moment of failure, when they can be open about their fears, their regrets, they're learning, they are inviting trust, not just with others, but within themselves. It's easy to say, I'm a vulnerable person, when everything is going smoothly. But when you've let someone down, or dropped the ball, or hurt someone, can you still be vulnerable then? Can you stay in the conversation instead of running? Can you say I'm sorry without adding but? Can you accept consequences with humility instead of resentment? That's the kind of vulnerability that creates transformation. That's the kind that builds trust. I've seen people lose jobs, relationships, opportunities not because they failed, but because they refused to own their failure. And I've seen others rise from incredibly hard moments not because they had a perfect apology or a PR team, but because they were honest. They were real. They didn't pretend to be unscathed. They said, this is hard. I'm struggling. But I'm here. That's the kind of presence we need more of in the world. We need more people who understand that failure is not the end, it's part of the process. We need more people who are emotionally resilient enough to sit with the discomfort of not being perfect. Who don't let shame win. Who choose curiosity over defensiveness. Growth over ego. Connection over protection. And here's the thing, when you watch how someone handles failure and vulnerability, you're not just seeing how they treat themselves. You're seeing how they'll treat you when the tables turn. Will they give you space to make mistakes? Will they listen instead of judge? Will they stay connected through conflict, or will they disappear when things get uncomfortable? These questions matter because failure isn't an occasional visitor, it's part of life. And vulnerability isn't a weakness, it's the only real path to authenticity. So when someone shows you how they handle these moments, pay attention. That's not just behavior. That's character. That's emotional maturity. That's the foundation of trust. So let's stop looking for people who never fall. Let's look for the ones who get up with integrity. The ones who fail and stay in the arena. The ones who understand that vulnerability isn't the price of admission to a meaningful life, it's the very proof that you're living. 1.1 of the clearest ways to understand someone's character is to watch how they respond when you set a boundary. Not when things are easy or agreeable. Not when you're doing what they want. But when you say no. When you say, I'm not comfortable with that. When you put a line in the sand and say, this is what I need. That's where the real stuff shows up. Boundaries are not walls. They're not punishments. They are, in their purest form, the distance at which I can love you and still love myself. They are the markers that help us show up with clarity and integrity in relationships. But the truth is, not everyone knows how to handle a boundary. And that's exactly why they're so important. How someone responds to a boundary reveals whether they value control or connection, whether they honor your needs or only their own comfort. When you set a boundary, you're essentially saying, I matter too. And people who are emotionally healthy will hear that, respect it, and even appreciate the clarity. They might not always agree with the boundary. It might even cause some discomfort. But they won't try to manipulate you out of it. They won't guilt trip you. They won't question your right to have limits. They'll take a breath, maybe ask questions, and adjust. That's what respect looks like. On the other hand, there are people who take boundaries as a threat. Not because your boundary is wrong or unfair, but because they're used to relationships that orbit around their comfort. They're used to getting their way. And when you shift that dynamic, when you stop saying yes out of obligation or fear, suddenly the power balance changes. And that's when you see their true colors. Watch how someone responds when you don't give in. When you say, "I need time," or "that doesn't work for me," or "I'm not okay with that behavior." Do they listen? Or do they push harder? Do they try to understand? Or do they start to question your loyalty, your intentions, your love? That reaction tells you more about the emotional maturity of a person than any long conversation ever will. I've had people in my life who absolutely loved me as long as I didn't say no. As long as I accommodated their needs. As long as I stayed quiet when something didn't feel right. But the moment I set a boundary, even a gentle one, the tone changed. Suddenly, I was being difficult. Or too sensitive. Or selfish. But here's what I've learned. Someone who sees your boundary as a betrayal was never truly connected to you. They were connected to their idea of who you should be for them. Setting boundaries can be terrifying, especially if you grew up in a family or culture where boundaries were seen as rejection or rebellion. Maybe you learned early on that saying no makes people upset. Maybe you were told that love means always saying yes. But real love doesn't ask you to abandon yourself. Real love doesn't punish you for protecting your peace. And anyone who tries to shame you for taking care of your emotional well-being is revealing more about themselves than they are about you. Healthy relationships are built on mutual respect. That means there's room for both people to have needs, preferences, and limits. It's not always neat or easy, but it's honest. And honesty creates safety. When someone can hear your no and not take it as a personal attack, that's someone who's done some inner work. That's someone who values connection over control. That's someone who understands that intimacy isn't about sameness, it's about truth. One of the most powerful things we can do as human beings is learn how to set boundaries without apology and observe who respects them without resentment. That's a crucial piece of emotional discernment. You're not asking people to be perfect. You're asking them to be respectful. And that's not too much to ask. When someone disregards your boundary, they're not just ignoring your words, they're signaling that your needs are negotiable. That your discomfort is worth less than their convenience. That's not love. That's entitlement. And it often shows up quietly. A dismissive laugh. A sarcastic comment. A passive-aggressive response. Little ways of saying, "I don't like your limit, so I'm going to punish you emotionally until you remove it." That is not a safe space. That is not mutual respect. What we tolerate teaches people how to treat us. And every time we allow a boundary to be crossed without consequence, we reinforce the idea that our limits are flexible. But when we stand firm, not harsh, not cruel, but clear, we begin to create space for relationships that are truly reciprocal. It doesn't mean people will always respond the way we hope. Sometimes setting a boundary reveals the relationship was built on conditions, not connection. But that revelation, as painful as it might be, is a gift. Because now you're seeing the truth. So watch. Not with judgment, but with clarity. Pay attention to who leans in and who leans out when you say, "This is what I need." Who respects your emotional space? Who honors your timing? Who allows you to be a full human being, not just a version of yourself that makes them comfortable? Boundaries are a form of honesty. They're not about pushing people away. They're about letting people know where you stand, so that real intimacy has a chance to grow. And how someone responds to that honesty tells you whether they're willing to meet you there. Because the bottom line is this: people who respect boundaries are people who can be trusted. People who can't. Not because they're bad, but because they're not yet ready to be in a relationship where both people matter equally. So next time you're wondering about someone's character, you don't have to look far. Just notice what happens when you draw a line, not in anger, but in self-respect. See if they cross it, or if they step back, look you in the eye, and say, "I hear you." That's where the truth is. That's where the relationship begins or ends. And either way, you're better off for having drawn it. If you found this helpful, share it with friends who need to hear it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and thank you for watching. Your time means a lot. Or, if you're going for something a little more casual and upbeat. Hey friends, if this resonated with you, like and share it with someone who needs the reminder. Thanks so much for watching. See you next time. Want me to help you write a full outro script for your video, too?